The return of the Ming Voyages, history, harmony, and the Chinese horizon. The Great Turning. In the early 15th century, the largest wooden ships the world had ever seen slid down the waterways of Nanjing. They were the treasure ships of the Ming dynasty, some reportedly reaching 400 feet or more in length, with 9 masts, watertight compartments, and the capacity to carry over 1,000 crew and passengers each. Commanding this armada was Admiral Zheng He, 1371 to 1433, a Muslim eunuch from Yunnan province. Captured as a boy during the Ming conquest of the region, castrated and later rising through the imperial household, he became the Yongle Emperor's most trusted servant and a symbol of the dynasty's ambitious outreach. Between 1405 and 1433, Zheng He led 7 monumental expeditions across the Indian Ocean, venturing as far as the east coast of Africa, including ports in present-day Vietnam, Malacca, Sri Lanka, Calicut, India, Hormuz, Persia, and Malindi, Kenya. The first voyage alone involved 317 ships and roughly 27,870 men. Later fleets were comparably vast, carrying porcelain, silk, lacquerware, and other luxuries while returning with giraffes, interpreted by the court as mythical qilin, omens of heavenly favour, zebras, ivory, exotic spices, and ambassadors from dozens of kingdoms. These were not voyages of conquest or colonial settlement in the European mould that would follow a century later. Imperial edicts framed them as displays of harmony and the bestowal of blessings upon the seas, ceremonial projections of Ming prestige that reinforced the tributary system. Foreign rulers offered symbolic tribute and received, in return, lavish gifts and recognition of the Ming as the civilized centre of the known world. The Yongle Emperor, Zhu Di, reigned 1402 to 1424, who had usurped the throne from his nephew and sought to legitimize his rule through spectacular achievements, sponsored the first 6 voyages. The 7th, under his grandson, the Yongle Emperor, sailed in 1431 to 1433. The fleets suppressed piracy along trade routes, collected intelligence, and expanded diplomatic networks, but they never sought permanent bases or territorial occupation. They embodied a Confucian-inflected vision of cosmic order, China as the Middle Kingdom, extending its moral and cultural influence outward without the need for raw domination. And then, abruptly, it stopped. After the Yongle Emperor's death in 1435, the Hongxi Emperor, reigned 1424 to 1425, and subsequent rulers, influenced by conservative Confucian scholar officials, halted further expeditions. The massive ships were left to rot in their dry docks in Nanjing and other ports. Official records of the voyages were systematically suppressed or destroyed, most famously in the 1470s when a Vice Minister of War, Liu Daxia, ordered the archives burned or hidden, decrying the expeditions as wasteful extravagances that wasted tens of myriads of money and grain, with no benefit to the state. The eunuch faction that had backed Zheng He lost ground to the bureaucratic elite in the Ministry of Rights and War, who prioritised fiscal restraint, agricultural self-sufficiency, and defence against northern Mongol threats. The Grand Canal was expanded for internal transport, rendering large-scale oceanic voyages less essential. Neo-Confucian orthodoxy, drawing from Juxi's emphasis on moral cultivation and suspicion of foreign luxuries and merchant activity, viewed maritime adventure as disruptive to the proper hierarchical order. China turned inward, focusing on continental security and bureaucratic stability. The Great Fleet, the most advanced naval force on Earth at the time, decayed into nothing. The consequences of this turning inward unfolded over centuries. Europe, then on the cusp of its own maritime age, gradually filled the vacuum left in the Indian Ocean and beyond. By the time Columbus reached the Americas in 1492, and Vasco da Gama rounded the Cape of Good Hope in 1498, the Ming had already withdrawn. The Qing dynasty that followed continued this insular posture, compounded by later encounters with Western gunboats. The Opium Wars, 1839 to 1842 and 1856 to 1860, the unequal treaties, and the Century of Humiliation, all trace back in a profound historical sense to the decision to abandon the treasure fleets and seal the maritime gates. Hegel's insight. The German philosopher G.W.F. Hegel, in his lectures on the philosophy of history, delivered in the 1820s and published posthumously, offered a judgment on China that proved both influential and enduringly misleading. He portrayed China as a stationary civilization, one that had achieved an early form of development but then froze in place, lacking the dialectical progress that defines true world history. For Hegel, China represented the beginning of history, the oldest state, with a patriarchal, theocratic despotism rooted in substantial unity, but not its engine. Its principle was one of unchanging custom and imperial authority. Equality prevails in China, but without any freedom, he wrote, with the emperor as the sole embodiment of the state and individuals subsumed into a family-like hierarchy that crushed subjective individuality and innovation. China and India, he argued, lay outside the world's history as mere presuppositions, their histories cyclical repetitions rather than progressive realizations of spirit and freedom. Hegel was partially correct in noticing a long phase of inward withdrawal. The China he encountered via European accounts in the early 19th century was indeed a realm that had largely abandoned the global stage after the Ming Voyages 4 centuries earlier. Yet he misunderstood the deeper dynamism. Chinese history was never static. The Song dynasty, 960 to 1279, had pioneered printing, gunpowder, and maritime commerce. The Ming itself oversaw agricultural innovations, population growth, and vibrant internal markets. The turning inward was not an eternal cultural essence, but a deliberate policy choice shaped by fiscal pressures, bureaucratic politics, and security priorities. Hegel, writing amid Europe's industrial and imperial ascent, could not foresee the resurrection. What he mistook for permanence was a historical interlude, enforced by Confucian conservatism, and later intensified by foreign humiliations. That pause would end in the 20th and 21st centuries. The resurrection of the Ming spirit. The 21st century is witnessing that resurrection, literally in hardware and metaphorically in ideology and global posture. China is rebuilding the maritime capacity it once abandoned 600 years ago. The People's Liberation Army Navy, PLAN, is now the largest in the world by hull count, with over 370 vessels as of recent assessments, surpassing the United States in total ships while rapidly closing gaps in tonnage, technology, and power projection. It operates multiple aircraft carrier groups, including the indigenously designed Fujian, with electromagnetic catapults and flat-deck operations, advanced destroyers like the Type 055 Renhai-class cruisers, and a growing submarine fleet. Chinese shipyards produce warships at a pace unmatched globally, supported by the world's largest commercial shipbuilding industry. The Coast Guard, maritime militia, and commercial fleets form a coordinated, grey zone presence, extending Chinese influence across the Indo-Pacific and beyond. The Belt and Road Initiative, BR1, announced by Xi Jinping in 2013 as the Silk Road Economic Belt and 21st Century Maritime Silk Road, extends this vision into a global infrastructure network. Chinese-built ports, Gwadar in Pakistan, Hambantota in Sri Lanka, Piraeus in Greece, and Chancay in Peru, dot the Indian Ocean and beyond, linking over 150 countries through roads, railways, energy projects, and digital corridors. The string of pearls, a concept first coined by US strategists in 2004, describes a network of facilities that enhances both commercial logistics and potential naval access. Xi himself has invoked Zheng He in speeches, describing the admiral's fleets as friendly emissaries who built a bridge for peace and East-West cooperation, framing the BR-1 as a modern echo of harmonious exchange rather than colonial extraction. This is no longer the Ming tributary system of hierarchical deference. It is a Chinese-centered globalization of trade, finance, and infrastructure, backed by state-owned enterprises, policy banks, and naval escort capabilities. Metaphorically, the spirit of the Ming Voyages is reborn as a cultural and ideological force. The language of harmony, hexi, and the community of shared future for mankind, Xi's signature concept articulated since 2013, mirrors the imperial edicts of Zheng He's era. Where the Ming sought to attract emissaries to the Forbidden City, today's China integrates foreign economies into a system of mutual, if China-led benefit. This narrative serves soft power purposes, countering perceptions of hegemony by emphasizing peaceful development rooted in historical precedent, aiming for the stars. The most dramatic expression of this renewed Ming spirit lies not only on the oceans, but above them, in space. In less than 3 decades, China's space program has achieved milestones that took the US and Soviet Union half a century. The Chang'e lunar missions have landed on the Moon multiple times, including twice on the far side, Chang'e 4 in 2019 and Chang'e 6 in 2024, returning samples with Chang'e 5 in 2020. The Zhurong rover explored Mars in 2021. The Tiangong space station, fully operational since the early 2020s, serves as a permanent orbital outpost with modules for research, a robotic arm, and rotating taikonaut crews. Mythological naming is deliberate. Chang'e evokes the goddess of the moon. Tiangong means heavenly palace. Zhurong is the god of fire. These choices assert cultural ownership of the cosmos, rewriting celestial narratives in Chinese terms. Plans include a crewed lunar base in the 2030s via the International Lunar Research Station with Russia and partners, crewed Mars missions, and the Long March 9 heavy-lift rocket, rivaling the Saturn V in capacity. Where Ming Voyages lasted 3 decades before withdrawal, China's space ambitions show institutional permanence, with sustained funding and political priority under the Chinese Communist Party. The difference this time. The difference between the 15th and 21st centuries is not merely technological, but structural, institutional, and spiritual. In the Ming era, outward projection depended on the personal favour of a single emperor and his eunuch allies. When Yongle died and Confucian bureaucrats gained ascendancy, prioritising frugality, northern defences, and ideological purity, the voyages ended. The enterprise was fragile because it lacked enduring scaffolding. It was an eruption tied to factional politics rather than systemic commitment. Today, the projection is embedded in durable institutions. The Chinese state operates through the CCP's long-term planning, 5-year plans, military-civil fusion, and state-owned enterprises rather than imperial whim. The BRI is a permanent network, not episodic voyages. The Navy and space program rest on an industrial base, massive R&D investment, and decades-long political consensus. Xi Jinping's Chinese dream of national rejuvenation institutionalizes the Ming spirit, drawing explicit parallels to Zheng He as a model of benevolent engagement. Yet ambiguities persist. Harmony rhetoric coexists with assertive territorial claims in the South China Sea, military base expansions, and debt concerns in BR1 projects. The voyages once transcended conquest. Today's ambitions blend economic interdependence with strategic leverage. Conclusion: History's second chance. History rarely offers second chances, but China seized one. The inward turn of the 15th century led to centuries of relative decline and humiliation. The ships rotted, the West rose. The Middle Kingdom became the sick man of Asia. Now the ships have returned, steel aircraft carriers and destroyers far surpassing wooden junks, supported by the world's largest shipbuilding industry. Rockets launch not just satellites, but a vision of Chinese-led order. The spirit of Zheng He sails again, unrestrained by the Confucian officials who once burned the records. This time, the scaffolding is institutional. CCP governance, technological supremacy in key domains, and a narrative of shared prosperity. The metaphor writ large around us is unmistakable. In an era of great power competition, China's maritime and cosmic outreach revives the Ming model of influence through presence, trade, and recognition, yet transformed by modernity. No longer fragile or episodic, it is systemic and sustained. The question is no longer whether China will project power outward. That has been answered. The question is what kind. The power of genuine harmony, fostering mutual recognition and shared futures, as in Zheng He's edicts. Or a power edging toward hegemony amid territorial assertions and strategic competition. The answer will shape not only China's destiny, but the global order. The ships are sailing, the rockets are launching, history is watching, and this time the horizon stretches farther than ever before.